Good evening. Welcome to ONV, a healthy conversation. I am your host, Nurse Pat, and this evening we're going to go in just a little bit of a different direction. We're not going to talk a lot about medicine. We're going to talk about teen dating violence, something that's happening in our community and in our world. And if you can see tonight, instead of a scripture, I'm going to say a phrase: see something, say something. And I have with me tonight as my guest Joni Kuhn, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll get into our conversation. Go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you for having me. My name is Joni Kuhn. I'm the executive director of a program called Heather's Closet. It was formed and started, unfortunately, after the death of my niece, who was violently, disturbingly murdered by her abuser back in 2007. And, the whole program started for the reasons that most people get involved in programs. Something happens in your life that affects you so dramatically. And I think the thing that got me the most, other than obviously the death, was afterwards. At the time, she was 20. And so at her mother's house, all of her friends came and gathered. And they were all sitting around and they were all talking. And as I was listening to them all, so many of them were aware of it. They were aware that she was in this abusive relationship. And they always, they had made remarks about how they didn't like him and they thought he was a little off. And they noticed that, the red flags that we now know what they are, the isolation, the just control, not letting her see her friends, making fun of the way she dressed. I mean, just all the signs that were there. And I just remember thinking, if they only knew, if they would have been aware of the signs, then maybe someone could have intervened, saw something, said something. So it kind of started that way.
And Joni started this program at Bishop Lewis High School. And it's called, as she said, Heather's Closet. And out of that came locker room leaders.
Right.
Because not only do girls suffer from violence, sometimes it's boys.
Right.
And men don't like to say. And a lot of times people don't believe the man. Oh, there's no way that woman can control that man, or that girl can make that boy do different things.
Right.
And tonight we know that a lot of teenagers may not be listening in, but those parents are. The grandparents are. The adults in their life are listening.
Right.
And we need to let them know that love doesn't hurt.
Exactly.
It's not controlling.
No.
No. And so when you see something, say something.
Right.
And that's the message we want to get across tonight. And Joni talked about her niece being murdered by this person. How long had she been in this relationship, if you don't mind?
I believe it was around 18 months. Very short. But again, and when I do talk to the students, I usually try to get them to understand that it all looks the same. Every abusive relationship has the same scenario, except for the outcome.
Okay.
Right? You're either a survivor or you're not. And it is, again, if you look at the wheel, the power control, the wheel, if you listen to, we've had, you've been there, we've had so many speakers and we've had a lot of survivors there. And when it was to the point where, honestly, there were a couple times we'd ask the club, well, what kind of speakers do you want? And they said, we love having the survivors, but we get it. Every story really is kind of the same. It starts out this way and it just progresses into the to the really bad part, and it does take, it's usually the average is 7 instances before they walk away, before they have the courage to walk away. So, yeah, it's always the same. And like you said, it's increasing. 33% of the victims don't share it with anyone, you know.
Why is that? Why do
Oh, I
you
think
think
it's
they don't
shame.
share?
I think mostly it's got to be shame. It's got to be embarrassment. Fear. Fear is a big one. The scariest part and the most dangerous part is when they choose to leave. Getting out is the most dangerous part.
And I did do some research today because I wanted to be able to talk about something that I don't really know a lot
Mm-hmm.
about.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across an article when you said fear. This young lady ended up not being a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
She had broken up with her boyfriend. They had been apart for about 2 months, and she was at work. He called her at work and asked her to meet him because she had left some things.
Mm-hmm.
She was 17 and he
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
20.
Mm-hmm.
And she met him after work and never returned home.
Yeah.
And they found her body
Right.
3 days later
Right.
after that. And she didn't tell anybody that she was meeting him
Mm-hmm. Right.
because her parents did not like him. They did not like the person she had become being around him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that
Well, I think in the teenage brain, I, you know, I, I'm not sure they grasp exactly what love is, right?
Mhm.
What the whole meaning of love is. They're so in that moment, right? That it's kind of hard for them to distinguish, is this, but he loves me. He apologized. He's never going to do it again, right? So I think some of the hard part for their friends and their family, because like I said, it's an average of 7 times of an abusive situation, right? That before they get the courage and they understand that this is happening. So friends, families, they don't know what to do, right? Other than, you got to stay with them. You got to be patient. You got to understand that, the one time may lead into 6 more or 10 more or years more of it because of all of those factors, because of fear, because you know what? I can change them. They love me. They didn't mean to do that. They give you all the excuses and they buy them because of I'm not sure their brain understands what the full concept of love is. This may be the only love that they've known so far. This may be their first relationship, and there's all the pressure of, you got to be with me. If you loved me, you'll stay with me. If you love me, you're going to choose me over your friends and we're going to go do this. So it's just the little things that nag at them. And so then they just kind of, they're in it. They're in the trap and it's really hard to get out.
And then through our program at Lures, I got a chance to talk to 2 of the young ladies that one of them had actually been a Lures student. And after she had spoken at one of the
Mm-hmm.
programs there, she came to me about 2 weeks later and she said, all the times I came in your office, I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid of what you would think of
Right.
me. And I was like, I didn't see it.
Right.
I'm going to be honest.
Right.
I didn't see it.
No.
She'd come in with a headache. Can I lay down for a little bit? And I'd let her lay down
Mm-hmm.
for a little bit.
Yeah.
Or she'll come in with a stomach ache or come in and ask for a snack. She repeatedly would come into my office.
Right.
And then after she graduated, she'd come back.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a heavy girl, what they consider
Right.
fat.
Yeah.
So nobody wanted her because she was fat.
Right.
But he liked her, and he had her to believe that
Right.
I'm the best you're going to get,
Right.
because nobody wants
Right.
a fat girl.
Yeah.
You're not pretty,
Yeah.
and all those things. And she said she dealt with that for a couple of years before she finally sat down and talked to her parents about it.
Right.
And her mom and her dad both told her, this is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was what got her. She said that Heather's Closet was there, but she wasn't a part of it because she didn't want to hear what Heather's Closet had to say.
Right.
But she was welcomed back as a speaker.
Yes.
And then one of the other young ladies that I spoke with, she had sort of a similar, she was not a Lure student, but she was taken away from her family. She followed this man out of the country.
Oh, my goodness.
And her parents didn't know where she was.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that. Because her mom and dad didn't like him. So the only way that she could be with him and convinced that he loved her was to leave and go with him.
Yeah.
She was not allowed to contact her family.
Right. It's
her phone.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
everything about it.
Yeah.
They had no way. And she said that not only was she verbally abused,
Oh, yeah.
she was physically abused. She was sexually
Absolutely.
abused
It's all
by
of 'em.
this person.
It's all of them. Financial is another big one. Financially abused.
Yes. Because she didn't have a job. She didn't know anybody where she was. She was out of the country. And she did not tell me how she finally got away from him. But she did get a hold of her dad for that.
Yeah.
And was able to get away from that situation.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, it's exciting that they were able to get away. I love the fact that they were able to understand it and get away. And I think one of the most rewarding parts of the program to me is, you know, once they're usually out of lures, I think they're still too embarrassed. It is a small community there.
Yes.
So I do think it's very hard for a student at Bishop Lures to come forward, or any private school, or any, you know, just because of that shame and embarrassment. But I have, over the years, you know, I've had parents call, I've had students who were able to help their either roommate or a college friend. You know, they saw the signs early, were able to convince them. So, you know, that's so rewarding to me. You know, I think over the years, maybe 5, 6 at least, you know, others that haven't come forward. But, you know, thank goodness, you know, and I do think 100% truly believe that education is the answer. You know, we have, you know, statistics are showing that 12-year-olds are now dating.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you know, when I was 12, I was outside playing hopscotch and kickball in the street and riding my bike and thinking I'm really cool.
Yeah.
You know, and they're in, and it's not, I mean, it's dating, you know, so it's starting to hit lower at the lower level. And so, you know, I think it's important that we get these programs somehow. You know, there is Heather's Law, which kind of emphasizes schools. It's not mandated, but it is encouraged for 6th through 12th grade to teach healthy relationships, you know.
I can't imagine a 6th grader
Right.
in love.
Right. 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 And a lot of times, I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of, maybe in most of those cases, I don't know, but I would think that, I think the abusive ones are probably a little bit older boys, you know, an 8th grader or a freshman, probably. But even that, right? So
Even
now
that.
we're a little bit lower in the age, so we got to focus a little bit more. You know, I think I'm beyond grateful to Bishop Lures High School for allowing me to do this. I'm not sure of any other high school that has a program like we do.
Wow.
I'm not sure. I don't know of any other that has a dedicated program like we do.
Now, when you're saying schools, what about our churches? Do you think that is something, and I'm asking, that's something that should be in our
Absolutely.
church community?
Absolutely. I think anywhere. You know, statistics are 1 in 4. Okay. I mean, think about that. 1 in 4. Um, I think I think I read maybe a million per year. Nearly 1.5 million high school students experience physical abuse.
Wow,
So,
that
I
is,
mean, so anywhere we can get it. Like I said, we are very, I kid you not, Bishop Lures is very blessed to have this program because it's not, it's a club, but we bring in speakers. We have
yes.
events. We have done 3 PSAs. We had a contest where a student wrote a song or wrote a
Oh,
poem.
yes,
We
and it
turned it
turned it
into
in.
a song.
Yes.
I mean, so we are doing every little thing we can. It's such a heavy topic. You know what I mean? It's just so heavy, to sit around and tell these kids, you know, 1 in 4 of you might be getting abused. Well, you got to somehow come up with something. We've had, we just all kinds of events. I mean, we have a week where we dedicated it just to that. We'd have during their lunch hour, they could go outside and draw pictures with chalk. We've had a Finding Hope where we did a scavenger hunt, with little clues, and then we give them and we started out by giving prom dresses away, and with each prom dress that we gave away, we gave statistics and we gave them, the red flags to be aware of because especially dances. Here are these 16, 17-year olds getting all dolled up, going out to dinner, playing an adult, and most times alcohol is probably involved. And then there's the situation,
Mm-hmm.
the jealousy, you danced with this person or, you didn't show me enough attention. I did this for you, all the dances, the graduation, the spring breaks, all of this is happening. So, they're put in somewhat of adult situations, you know, not sure how to handle it when it gets out of control. And a lot of times that's where your friend comes in. If you and I are at an event and someone comes up to you, who I would thinking is your partner and he's being abusive, there's ways of helping without causing a big scene, distracting you, coming up
Mm-hmm.
and distracting you, pulling you away from the situation. We try to teach them ways to help without, because it is hard for a friend. And, the thing that I find in the last couple of years, which was really hard to for these kids to understand, is that if their friend is in this situation and they witness it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not a TV show, right? It's not, you're not, this person isn't going to go file charges. And the next day, this person's going to get arrested. And the next day, they're going to be at trial. And the next day, they're, handed down a sentence. It just doesn't happen that way. With Heather, it was 2007, she was murdered. And I want to say it was 2 years later before we went to trial.
Okay.
So, you have to go through the process and you have to learn how to be patient and you have to learn, that's a hard thing to grasp. Okay, this is going to be, and especially if you're in high school, especially if you're a senior getting ready to go to college. So the next 2 years of your life is going to be spent, right? So just getting them to understand all the specifics and saying, yes, but it is worth it, right? You don't want to.
As the time it starts to wind down, but one of the things that I do want to ask you is how or when did the family find out about your niece?
Well, she went missing.
Okay.
So the timeline was she finally had press charges. They were showing up to court. They were told that he was probably going to get 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
So they show up in court. I believe it was maybe, I want to say December, maybe. And they show up in court, and it got moved back because someone's son was playing in a national football game. So they postponed it. And that was when the time he convinced her, I believe, it was he's going
We
to
should
change.
try it again.
And so she went off the radar.
Oh, okay.
And I think he had bought a house. She had went and moved in with him, and just she went off the radar. So she, the mom filed a missing person after, a couple, they were in contact a little bit here and there. And then all of a sudden in, I want to say April, it went totally silent.
Now there's a book. I got it off of Amazon. I read it.
Mm-hmm.
I was in tears as I read it. I think a little bit was because I did know the story
Right.
prior to reading it, but it took me to get it. Diasha kept telling me that I needed to read it,
Yeah.
and I did read it. And if you want to tell us a little bit about that book, the title.
Yeah, it is it's a roommate. After the murder, Josh decided he needed some roommates to help him pay for the house. And they moved in. And little did they know that they were remodeling the murder scene. And it's pretty horrific. It was a 3-day span of him murdering her. He stabbed her, I believe, 60-something times. Didn't know what to do because, now he has a dead body in his house. So he went out to the local hardware store, bought some. He decided he thought he could burn the body.
Oh, wow.
So he set her afire, and of course that set off all of his smoke detectors, and that didn't work. So then he decided to chainsaw her to pieces. I forget how many trash bags, and then he spread them out across. So of course there's this scene. Well, he had tried to cover it up, cleaned it up, in a couple of days afterwards. I'm assuming. I don't know how long it took him. And then he was, remodeled, and was painting it black and all of this. So he went on vacation with a friend of his, and when he came back, he confessed to his dad and his uncle, and they turned him in. And so then when they came to the house, they were able to find it all.
That in itself is sad. And if there's just one message we can get out to our teens and to their friends, as you always, your motto, see something, say something.
Right.
And your parents aren't your enemies.
No.
And that's the one thing
No.
that we have to get our kids to understand. We may be a little rough around the edges and say some things, but they're not your enemies.
Right.
And parents that are listening or watching tonight, pay attention. That's the only thing that I can say is pay attention.
And you have to remember also that as a teenager, who are you going to go to first?
Your friends.
You're going to go to your friends.
Your friends.
So parents can also, you know what I mean? The parent of a friend, if they notice something going on, talk to that friend and say, is there something we can do? And again, I tell you, it takes a lot of courage to be that friend that's going to speak up, because you can lose your friend over this. They may never speak to you again because you don't understand how much he loves me or she loves me. You don't understand our relationship. He's sorry. He'll never do it again. I forgive him, and it's this cycle. And, as a friend and as a parent, you're their first defense,
Well, like I said, we're getting down to the wire. But this is not a conversation that's going to end.
No.
We're going to have to do this again. Honestly, because there's so much that can be said
It is.
about this.
Mhm.
But I do want you to get your information out there. If there's a parent or someone listening to us or viewing this tonight,
Mhm.
how can they get in touch with you to know some of the steps or some of the things that
Well,
need to
I
be
think
done?
actually there are, honestly, there's so many resources out there. The National Domestic Hotline. If you're in that situation and you think that your friend or your friend's daughter, or your child is in this relationship, the 1-800 hotline numbers are great because they will guide you. They'll talk you right through it. It's amazing. There are so many resources out there. The YWCA here in Fort Wayne is a great resource. Victims Assistance is another great resource. But the national ones, loveisrespect.org. What are the other ones? Obviously, the National Hotline, uh, Yardley, One Love Foundation, Respect. That's another one. Loveisrespect.org. They all have hotlines, and the hotlines are the best way because they're live. You're
Mm-hmm.
gonna talk to someone, and they're gonna say, "Well, you need to do this immediately," or "Try this, and let's walk through this." So I think those hotlines are great. If anyone out there wants to know if your school's involved, call your school and find out if they have a program. If not, I'd love to come and explain to you what we do at Bishop Luers because it is amazing.
It is truly amazing.
Yes.
I have sat in
Yeah.
on the programs there. I it's just mind-boggling
Mm-hmm.
when I think about how far we've come
Mm-hmm.
and how far we need to go.
Right.
And if just the one thing, again, I'll repeat it. See
See
something,
something, say
say
something.
something,
Right.
because you may think it's just some little
Right.
small, little itty bitty thing.
Right.
Uh, but if you see it enough
See it
times,
enough, and don't be afraid to ask.
yeah,
But you also have to remember you have to be very supportive and not judge. That's the hardest part for a friend is to not judge. It's easy to judge and say, "Oh, he's an idiot, she's an idiot. Why are you hanging with them?" You got to remember, they think they love them.
mhm.
They're in love with this person. This is who they want to be with. So you have to be that non-judgmental friend that says, "But how does it make you feel when he does this?" Right?
That is true.
So.
Well, as we come to a close, and I will say to Joni, we are going to continue this conversation. You'll be back again
I'll be happy to.
because we do so
Yes.
much.
Right.
Because it's not just a girl thing,
Right. No.
it's a boy thing.
Yeah,
And
really
we
is.
have people that are in different types of relationships
Right.
now.
Oh yeah.
So it happens.
Yeah.
And as we always say here at ONV, always protect your mind. And thank you, Joni.
Thank you.